not very many rules. They just said, here are a few rules. And then the consequence of that, and this was the revolution, you could get everywhere from very small systems to very large systems. And in these days, like in the 60s and 70s, IBM would build a processor in Poughkeepsie, New York, or in Montpellier, France. And the disk drive would be built in San Jose, California, or in Sindelfingen, Germany. And the printer would be built somewhere else. And they ship all this stuff to a customer, and they plug it all together, and then it would work. And it just revolutionized the computer industry, and IBM is still has a great position to this day as a consequence of that. So, what did modularity enable? Help manage complexity. This is the 1990 era mainframe. You see all these modules. Right? Helps manage complexity, reduce the interdependency of design processes, and help accommodate uncertainty of technological change. So the CPU you needed to update 1 year, and the printer would last much longer. You just plug them in, and it was okay. Right? So that was really the first major complex system, modularity. The interesting thing about it is modularity also fosters much more competitive intensity. Right? Once IBM did this, all of a sudden they had this problem, which were what were called plug-compatible manufacturers, who would do a plug-compatible printer or plug-compatible disk drive, because a well-defined standard interface allowed people to plug in. Okay, so let's look at some other examples of design rules. Right? And the truth of the matter is modularity is everywhere. We don't necessarily see it. Number one, the plug in the wall. Right. There's a set of design rules. These two pins, this is the US plug, but it's similar to my plug. Two pins are certain spacing apart, a certain dimension. This is the neutral, this is hot, that's ground. The first electric power systems, Thomas Edison's first electric power system in New York City, he did everything from build the generator to putting out the wiring to making the light bulbs. Okay, one big monolithic system. Okay, but once they came out with design rules which said, here's a physical dimension, and in the US it was 105 to 120 volts, 60 hertz frequency, set of design rules. Then you had an explosion of options. Lots of other people can make things that plug into the electrical grid. RJ45 jack for Ethernet. Design rules. Anybody can connect things with a very well-defined interface. Another example of design rule: keyboard plug, mouse plug, whatever. Okay. Another example of design rule: motherboard. Okay, this is an ATX motherboard. Do you all know what an ATX motherboard is? Right, the ATX standard was put out by Intel. Okay, and they said the mounting holes are always here, 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 there. PCI cards or whatever. Memory always same size. Power. This is the power connector. Here's where I plug in my IDE this way. Everything's standard. Okay. By the way, how did Taiwan manufacturers get into the PC business? Well, anybody could buy a motherboard and plug it into a chassis and make a PC. Anybody could do it. In fact, I haven't bought a name brand PC in many years because I prefer to just buy what I want. I just go buy the pieces. Actually, the truth of the matter is, this is backwards. Okay, but my daughter, when she gets tired of her PC and she wants to upgrade it, she gives me all the old pieces. Okay, so I always have all these parts lying around, and that's, eventually I get enough parts. It's like, I think I can assemble a PC, so I got to put it together. It takes about 15 minutes. Right? You don't even need instructions because everything is very well codified. It's as easy as plugging in parts. Now, what's the problem? The problem with that is if anybody can do it, it gets commoditized. Why? Because she'll do it for, $5 to assemble it. And I'm hungry, so I'll do it for $4. And I do it for $4, and he says, I'll do it for $3. Right, so anytime stuff is that easily substitutable, you get commoditization. We see that in this country. I had a friend who I have to actually meet after this class. He was asked by the government to write a report. Why is it so much Taiwan industries in commodities? And it's like if you build your strategy based on modular standard interfaces, you know, the most brilliant thing about ATX motherboard is the I/O connector block, right? Because you know they said, oh, I may want to put different connectors. So ATX motherboard always comes with a little metal plate with holes punched so the I/O connectors are different. Right? This was brilliant. Why did Intel do this? Intel said, gee, you know, I want to increase sales of my microprocessors. So if I commoditize everything else around me, it'll get cheaper. If I give customers choice of 5, 10 vendors, they can make fight with each other. The motherboards will get cheaper. As the motherboards get cheaper, PCs get cheaper, the world buys more. I sell more microprocessors. Brilliant strategy. Served them extremely well. Right? So, for example, power supplies always have that kind of connector. Memory, always, this is a standard 168 pin or whatever the number in the DIMM socket is. So you know what? Everything that plugs into there is commoditized except Intel microprocessors. Is that a good strategy? It's a good strategy for Intel. Right? And so that's kind of the power of modularity. Are there issues associated with modularity? Right? You get increased flexibility. You know, I call it postponed variety creation. Dell, right? Everybody says Dell was a brilliant PC company. Dell didn't do anything special. All they did is use ATX motherboards, have Taiwan companies supply motherboards, plug everything together, and ship it to you, anything you want. And then all they did is organize the supply chain. Right? I once had a conversation with a guy who ran the server business at Dell, who was a friend of mine. And you know, we were having the discussion of what does the chief technical officer at Dell do? The chief technical officer at Dell didn't do anything. Right? There's no need for a chief technical officer because all they do is assemble parts. You really get increased competitive intensity and commoditization of components for which there are low entry barriers. And you get a reordering of the value chain. The profit shifts to the hidden modules with high barriers, microprocessor, Microsoft Windows. Right, so who makes all the money in the PC business? So, anyways, you know, one of the other interesting things that we're interested in from a research standpoint is inter-firm modularity. What are the implications of when modularity is divided among multiple firms and you have to organize multiple firms in the value chain? You know, modular designs involve this opposite exercise. So there's very well researched theory on all of this. You know, this type of theory on modularity, very well researched. I wonder how many people in commodity businesses think about this. Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Right, so as I said, this type of modularity, this is the foundation of much of Taiwan's high-tech industry, even LCD panels. Okay, I'll talk about another case we did in LCD panels lately. You know, LCD panels are all it's not quite as well clarified, but they're interchangeable, right? If you buy a Sony Bravia flat panel television, you could have a Chime panel, you could have a Samsung panel, you could have I know they were using Sanyo panels, you could have an NTHU panel, you could have an LG LCD panel. You know, the Taiwan company does the commodity part, the branded guy does, you know, the